With the introduction of the new species known as human, many old ideas were brought back. In particular, as far as the military was concerned, the idea of putting turrets back on their dreadnoughts. Many of the species had simply gone to standoff weapons and were firing well beyond visual range with their main guns. With this, all you had to do was stack on fixed emplacements on the bow of your ship and simply point your ship in a direction and lay waste to them with a volley after volley of fire. However, the humans had a different idea. As shown in their previous conflict, they would simply do what they call a micro jump and end up almost exactly in the center of your formation, swinging the turrets and simply firing in every direction. Even if you were lucky enough to fire off several of your missiles towards them, their point defense systems would simply swing around just like any other turrets and take out the missiles, or they would misdirect them and they would end up blasting your own ships. This would cause the complete confusion of your own fleet as you tried to maneuver, ending up more often than not crashing into your own ships and then being easy prey for human turrets. And these turrets were nothing to be scoffed at. In fact, many of them could fire through a cruiser or destroyer with a single shot, and in some cases would fire through several ships before being halted by the sheer mass of what they were firing through. That being said, seeing the effectiveness of turrets, many of the other species began to commission new ships that had turrets on them as well. Although most still stuck with the traditional staying at far off distance, they also decided to outfit many of their ships with missile tubes that would be short range, point defense systems, and of course, one or two additional turrets. However, they did not expect the humans to be able to fight like this very often, as their numbers were well beyond that of anyone else. It was a miracle that they actually were able to fight off the invasion from the Vitam back in the day. It had been over 10 years now since that battle took place, and the humans had been given their own sectors to rule over. And the humans did so, but did not expand beyond that. Many believed that as soon as they got their territory, they would simply build up their military and expand beyond their points, which they did not. It seemed as though the humans were content, at least for a while, in their small little sectors of space. However, many were planning on taking over this sector as they realized how dangerous the humans could possibly be, and they looked forward to taking over each of the colonies one by one. This was a standard military tactic. Go in and take the weakest points first, so that you can take authority and power away from the central command. Once you do this, you will cause discourse inside them, showing the general population that they cannot be protected by the central command structure. And then there would be internal strife, and with that, they would become weaker and then become easy prey. A simple divide and conquer strategy, one that is universal throughout the entirety of the stars. However, the humans never looked at that way. And when meeting humans out in space, as they did travel for mostly commerce reasons, you couldn't help but like them. Many were extremely polite. They were not very imposing to look at, although their muscle density was that of solid nightmares compared to the rest of the universe. But most sentient species, after speaking with a human for less than 4 or 5 minutes, would realize that these humans were very polite, very well-mannered, and also very funny. It was this way in which they spoke different slangs and idioms which did not translate, and when they were finally explained, they would be usually met with some sort of strange other slang that would come out from the alien tongues as they tried to pronounce these words. Of course, there are some that are universal, excrement, of course, but the humans have this strange interest in it as they have many different words to explain this. But that was not what made them actually scary. Though they could lift up most crates that took 5 or 6 personnel to lift with one hand and simply put the crate on their shoulder and walk normally without hesitation. it is not what made them scary. Everyone believed that they would be less intimidating as more and more of our own space stations and our own ships began to implement the turret system that the humans had brought back into the galactic fold. However, the humans had a few other cards up their sleeves. We didn't know this until one of the other sentient species decided to get froggy and jump. The Triflex, a amphibious species, decided to try their luck against a few of the human colonies and believed that they had the ability to fight off the humans' ambush attacks, what they called a blitzkrieg, as they had many of their own ships were designed specifically for close quarters combat. This would be able to take down the human dreadnought, as no ship could handle that much firepower at one time. And so they ended up aiming towards a human colony, but what they found surprised them. Nothing. Nothing was on their sensors. Nothing outside the planet except for a few satellites. Nothing was there in space. The vacuum itself was empty. The Triflex decided it would be easy for them to surround the planet and stop any communications, which is what they did. At least, they tried to. As they got closer to the first habitable world, they could hear over their communications a transmission from, they assumed, one of the planets. Attention, attention, approaching vessels. You have entered sovereign human territory. Return back or you will be fired upon. The Triflins laughed at the idea. There was nothing there. What was this empty threat that they were shoving at them? Asking, what are you going to do? Chuck a rock at us? Or, oh no, you're going to spit from your planet and somehow it's going to reach all the way up here. I don't think so. It began to be a whole joke around their fleet. And then again they had a communication. Attention, approaching alien fleet. You have not turned around away from this planet. We know you are receiving our transmission. Turn around and withdraw from this sector immediately. If you do not, this is your final warning, and you will be fired upon. The Triflex again laughed at the idea, as there was still nothing on their scanners, nothing anywhere. Seriously, what are they going to do? They can't reach them from the surface. They haven't even reached lunar orbit yet. And yet, as the Triflex began to get close to the planet, something began to happen. 1, 2, 3, even more ships began to go offline. They couldn't understand, but some reason, even on their own sensors, their own vessels just simply went offline and went adrift. They began to scan the vessels and realized that the vessels were completely pierced from different angles. Either they would be hit in the engine compartment and all the engines would cease and all the power would shut down, or they would be shot clean through the bridge and the bridge crew was simply floating now in the vacuum of space, if they weren't completely annihilated by whatever had struck them. Then another one went down, and another. All around the exterior, ships went down one after another. They had not struck the core. What the hell was hitting their ships? They couldn't understand it, but they were losing ships with a single strike. How in the hell was this possible? They couldn't figure out what was going on. And then they heard a communication over the radio. We told you to go away. You didn't listen. I'm going to be nice and tell you one last time. Fuck off. Less than a minute later, 4, 5, 6 ships went down all of a sudden. The Triflex suddenly started to freak out. What the hell was hitting them? They began to scatter in all different directions, taking evasive action. They didn't know what was striking them. They began to fire in all different directions. What the hell was out there? Something had to be out there. They began to take in their ordnance and just launch it in random directions across the different sectors of this space. They aimed it at the moon, they aimed it at the planet, they aimed it into the middle of nowhere and began to fire. Their point defense cannons would spray and pray in different directions, trying to strike something. And then one of the communications officers simply said, "What is that?" They used their maximum magnification, could barely see small, tiny dots. Small, tiny, little synthetic pieces out in the void of space. They used their other magnification to look around, and they could see that there were these same small dots, 3, 4, 5 of them in a group, all surrounding the Triflex fleet. And then they saw something they really hoped they wouldn't. They saw a small spark come from one of these synthetic pieces. And within 2 seconds, another one of their ships went dark, as it was pierced from stem to stern. The round that had been fired had gone right through the ass end of the ship and had launched right through the cockpit. The Triflex realized what had happened. They had flown right into an ambush, but why couldn't they see them? What the hell had happened? Don't humans fight with dreadnoughts and jump in? Isn't that their standard tactic? What the hell is going on? And then they saw several other sparks, and another 4, 5, 6 ships began to go down. One of them was simply grazed and started screaming into its comms, "I'm getting the fuck out of here!" and turned back to where it was coming from. Surprisingly, it was never fired on again, as it went full burn outside the gravity wells enough to make its jump out. The other ships were very soon to follow, except for the main vessel. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was arrogance. I don't know. But when you wrap arrogance and stupidity in one complete package, something so efficiently stupid was easy prey. As soon as the last of the Triflex fleet had left and the remaining hulks were in space, the stealth patrol ships made their appearance and began scanning all the ships for survivors. They only found 18 survivors. Only 17 would make it back to Triflex space, as one was too badly injured and humans could not save it. From that moment on, there was only one human vessel that would ever enter Triflex space ever again. Just one. A simple cargo transport flew to the Triflex closest planet, and they released those that had come into human space. They released them naked as they kicked them out the cargo hold, but with some sort of honor, they carried the lost one, the one that they could not save, on one of their stretchers, covered by a white sheet, a pristine white sheet, and laid it down with absolute care. Then they loaded their ship, and without another word, left. The last thing the Triflex heard from the humans as they began to spin up their engines to jump, it was a message from the ship's captain that said, "Stay out."